It's been 1 month now since a monsoon storm blew through Phoenix, taking down the roof and walls of a large warehouse and killing a 22-year-old man who was working inside.
And now we're learning just how powerful and destructive that storm really was. Investigator Morgan Lowe in studio, you've been talking with structural engineers to see how they figure out why those massive walls came down.
Yeah, we have a lot of these big warehouses in the Phoenix area, and these buildings are supposed to be able to withstand the winds we saw that night in late July. But something went wrong, and we're now learning that it wasn't just one building that came down that night. It was 1 month ago when the walls came down and the roof of this West Phoenix warehouse collapsed.
And we begin with first alert weather coverage as a strong monsoon storm hits the valley this evening.
A storm unlike any in recent memory here in the valley.
The weird thing is that we had had a bunch of activity in the mountains and in Tucson, and it had been pretty quiet around the valley until just after sunset when these storms started popping up.
Arizona's family chief meteorologist Royal Norman watched the weather radar that night as the storm descended on Phoenix.
It was about a 90-minute duration storm, which is pretty long for any thunderstorm, let alone a monsoon storm.
What did this one produce that was unusual in that 90 minutes?
90 minutes, 20 microbursts. Never seen anything like that.
The National Weather Service estimates winds of 70 to 80 miles per hour struck the area of the warehouse in West Phoenix. Firefighters searched the rubble for a missing warehouse worker.
Obviously, there is a lot of damage, so we are worried about secondary collapses.
After 3 days, they found the body of 20 Iswaldo Montoya.
He was a very loving, caring brother, son, always caring for my mom.
This is not the outcome we wanted.
Later, metal braces hold up the remaining walls, and you can still see the damage as the investigation into why this happened gets underway. It turns out this isn't the only building that was damaged in that storm. With our drone, we see at least 2 other warehouses with roof damage and walls held upright with metal braces. Across an empty lot, another large warehouse with a collapsed roof and walls. It's almost like a tornado or even a bomb struck this area.
There is the warehouse right there, and so you can see how this first one really just kind of exploded on that site.
Royal is describing the line of microbursts that cross the valley from north to south, each one producing enough energy to take down trees, roofs, and walls.
On a microburst, it comes down and it fans out instantly when it hits the ground. And so we can presume, and also we saw on radar, that that biggest microburst occurred very close to those warehouses.
Buildings in Arizona are not built to the same standards as buildings in areas where you get hurricanes or tornadoes. But buildings here are supposed to withstand summer thunderstorms. Do you think that the investigators are going to be able to figure out what went wrong?
It's certainly possible.
Joe Zebik is a structural engineer who is hired to figure out why buildings collapse. What does someone like you go in and do?
I'm going to look at the wind speeds for the area. I'm going to look at the debris that's left over.
Zebik refused to speculate on what caused the warehouses to collapse, whether it was design problems, structural weakness, or had the building tenants somehow weakened the roof or walls over the years. But he did say the fact that multiple buildings were damaged in similar ways could indicate this was just a really bad storm rather than a building structure problem, and a reminder that our thunderstorms can be dangerous and deadly.
I'm probably going to be concentrating much more on environmental effects on the weather.
You look at a building like this, is it a riddle? Is it a puzzle?
I would call it a puzzle.
And Joe Zebik says there are a lot of factors that could play into what happened to bring those walls down. But all of the buildings that were damaged used the tilt-up construction technique, meaning the walls were brought to the location intact and then tilted up. Now, those walls are supposed to be sturdy, and that construction technique is used all over the country.
I had no idea that other warehouse collapsed. We didn't know the extent of the damage at the first warehouse that initial night. We just knew somebody was missing inside. How did we realize that the other warehouse collapsed right around the corner?
Well, nobody was killed or injured, so there's no like media alert that goes out when something like that happens. But when we were out focusing on this warehouse, we just looked around and started spotting other braces against the wall on other buildings. And then this one was about 300 yards away. And I thought, that looks like that one was affected as well.
Yeah. Well, you said it off the top. We have a lot of warehouses here and a lot of people working inside, so it certainly is a concern. Morgan, thanks.